Jake Sullivan stepped out of the small transport ship onto the strange alien deck. The floor under his feet looked like it was made of crystal, but it felt warm and soft. Strange blue lights moved through the walls like water, making everything glow with an eerie light. The alien ship was huge, stretching out in all directions as far as he could see. Jake put his hands in his pockets and looked around. He had been expecting this moment for 3 months now. The aliens called this meeting a final diplomatic exchange, but Jake knew it was really a trap. The blue-skinned aliens with 4 arms, called the Zephyrians, had been testing humans for months. They thought humans were weak and stupid, just lucky enough to stumble into space travel. Ambassador Lisa Morgan had told Jake not to come alone. She said it was too dangerous. But Jake understood what game the aliens were playing. They wanted to see if humans would scare easily. They wanted to know if humans would beg for mercy when things got tough. Jake walked through the long hallway. The walls pulsed with that strange blue light, and he could hear a low humming sound coming from somewhere deep in the ship. His boots made soft clicking sounds on the crystal floor. He was not worried. He was actually looking forward to this. The big doors at the end of the hallway opened by themselves. Jake walked into a huge round room with a very high ceiling. In the center of the room was a throne made of what looked like living coral. It was moving slowly, changing colors from blue to purple to green. Sitting on the throne was the alien leader, High Strategist Vexed HARA. She was tall and thin, with 4 arms and translucent blue skin. Her face had no nose, just 2 small holes where a nose should be. She had 4 eyes, 2 where human eyes would be, and 2 more on the sides of her head. When she breathed, gill slits on her neck opened and closed. Jake had learned that when those gill slits moved fast, it meant the alien was happy or excited. "Human Commander," Vextara said. Her voice came through speakers in the walls because she could not speak human languages naturally. "You have arrived as you promised. I must say I'm surprised that you came alone." Jake shrugged his shoulders. Traffic was not bad today. Vextara's 4 eyes narrowed. She did not like Jake's casual attitude. "Your species always makes jokes at the wrong time. This will not help you in what is about to happen. This meeting will decide if humans deserve to live peacefully in the galaxy, or if your worlds need to be taken over by people who know how to run them properly." "Taken over," Jake repeated slowly. "That is a nice way of saying you want to conquer." "You use such direct language," Vextara said as she stood up from her throne. She moved like a dancer, smooth and graceful, but there was something dangerous about the way she moved. "But you are correct. You see, Commander Sullivan, this entire negotiation has been a test. We wanted to see how smart your species is. We wanted to see if you understand military tactics. We wanted to see if you are good at making deals." Jake nodded. "And what did you find out?" "We found out that your species is a complete failure." Her gill slits were moving faster now, showing that she was getting excited. "You sent just 1 person to what you must have known was a trap. You came here without any backup. You have no weapons. You do not seem to have any plan except to walk right into our hands." Jake looked around the room. He had noticed the shadows in the alcoves around the walls as soon as he entered. The positions were too perfect to be accidental. Someone was hiding in those dark spaces. "You know," Jake said calmly, "I did notice those shadows when I came in." Vextara's gill slits fluttered even faster, very observant. "But observation will not save you now." She made a gesture with one of her 4 hands, and the shadows stepped forward. 10 alien warriors in full battle armor emerged from the alcoves around the room. Each one was huge, bigger than Jake, and covered in black armor that seemed to absorb light. Their helmets had glowing red eyes, and each warrior carried weapons that hummed with energy. The warriors moved in perfect coordination, taking positions around the room so that Jake was completely surrounded. Their weapons were all pointed at him. The energy weapons made a high-pitched whining sound that hurt to listen to. "My 10 elite warriors surround you, human," Vextara announced proudly. "Each one of these warriors is capable of defeating a dozen of your kind in combat. Each one is loyal to me until death." Each one is eager to show you why the Zephyrian Empire has conquered 43 star systems. Jake looked around the circle of warriors. He studied their positions, their weapons, and their body language. He could see that they were confident. Maybe too confident. They thought this would be easy. Then Jake looked back at Vextara. For the first time since entering the room, he smiled. "Great," he said, and cracked his knuckles. "I am bored anyway." Vextara blinked all four of her eyes. She had been expecting fear or anger or maybe begging. She had not been expecting Jake to look happy about being surrounded by her best warriors. "You do not understand the situation," she said slowly. "You are one human. There are 10 of my elite warriors. Each of these warriors has been training for combat since they were children. Each one has been enhanced with the best technology our empire can provide. Each one has fought in dozens of battles and won every time." Jake rolled his shoulders and stretched his neck. "Sounds like fun? Fun?" Vextara's voice rose higher. "You think this is fun? You think being surrounded by superior warriors is amusing?" "Superior?" Jake chuckled. "Lady, you have no idea what you are dealing with." The warriors tensed, ready to attack. Their weapons charged up with more energy, making the whining sound even louder. Red targeting lights appeared on Jake's chest and head as the warriors prepared to fire. "You are either very brave or very stupid," Vextara said. Jake looked at her with that same easy smile. "Maybe both. But here is the thing you do not understand. About humans. What? We do not just get better when we practice. We get better when we are challenged. And lady, I have not been challenged in a very long time." Vextara felt a chill run down her spine. There was something in Jake's voice, something in his eyes, that made her suddenly doubt her plan. This human was not acting like someone who was trapped and about to die. He was acting like someone who had just been offered exactly what he wanted. "Warriors," she commanded, "prepare to—" But Jake was already moving. The first warrior never saw him coming. One moment, Jake was standing in the center of the room, hands in his pockets, looking relaxed. The next moment, he was right in front of the warrior, moving so fast that the alien's enhanced reflexes could not keep up. Jake's hand shot out and grabbed the warrior's primary weapon arm. The warrior tried to pull back, but Jake's grip was like a steel trap. The warrior was strong, much stronger than any normal human should be. But Jake's hand did not budge. Then Jake squeezed. The warrior's armor began to crack. The sound was loud. In the suddenly quiet room, like breaking glass, the warrior's eyes went wide with shock and pain as his weapon fell from his suddenly numb fingers. "Impossible," Vextara whispered. Jake twisted his wrist, and the 300-pound warrior went flying across the room. He crashed into the wall with a sound like thunder, and the living coral throne actually flinched away from the impact. Jake turned to look at the other 9 warriors, who were all staring at their fallen comrade in shock. "Next?" Jake asked pleasantly. The second warrior did not wait for Jake to invite him. He attacked immediately, moving faster than any human eye should be able to follow. His 4 arms moved in perfect coordination, each one holding a different weapon. Energy blades that could cut through spaceship. Metal flashed through the air toward Jake's head and chest. Jake moved like he was dancing. He stepped to the side, and the first blade missed his ear by an inch. He leaned back, and the second blade passed over his face. The third blade came at his stomach, and Jake simply was not there anymore. The fourth blade struck where his leg had been, cutting nothing but air. The warrior spun around, confused. Jake was standing behind him now, though no one had seen him move. Jake reached out with one hand and tapped the warrior on the shoulder. It was a gentle tap, like someone trying to get attention. But the warrior's armor cracked, and he stumbled forward. "How did you—" the warrior began to say. But Jake was already moving again. This time Jake grabbed the warrior's helmet with both hands. The helmet was made of the strongest metal the Zephyrian Empire could produce. It was designed to protect against plasma cannons and laser rifles. But when Jake squeezed, it crumpled like paper. The warrior inside the helmet made a gurgling sound and collapsed. He was not dead, but he would not be fighting again anytime soon. 2 down, Jake said calmly. The remaining 8 warriors looked at each other. They had trained together for years. They knew each other's moves, each other's thoughts. Without speaking, they launched a coordinated attack. 4 warriors attacked from the front, their weapons blazing with energy. 2 more came from the sides, trying to flank Jake. The last 2 jumped high into the air, coming down from above with heavy weapons that could punch holes in tank armor. Jake stood in the center of the storm and moved like water. He flowed between the energy blasts, ducked under the flanking attacks, and caught one of the jumping warriors by the ankle. With a casual flick of his wrist, he sent the warrior flying into his partner, and both of them crashed into the wall. The 4 warriors, attacking from the front, pressed their attack. Their weapons fired continuously, filling the air with deadly energy. The beams were bright enough to blind normal eyes and hot enough to melt steel. But Jake moved through them like they were gentle rain. One warrior got close enough to try a physical attack. He swung a massive war hammer that weighed more than Jake's entire body. The hammer moved through the air with enough force to crush a car. Jake caught it with his bare hand. The warrior pulled with all his strength, but the hammer did not move. Jake was holding it steady with just one hand, and his arm was not even shaking. The warrior's 4 eyes went wide with terror. "Strong hammer," Jake said pleasantly, "but you are holding it wrong." Jake twisted the hammer, and the warrior's grip broke. The alien stumbled backwards, staring at his own hands in shock. Jake hefted the hammer, testing its weight. "Let me show you how it is done," Jake said, and swung the hammer in a gentle arc. The hammer moved slowly, almost lazily. But when it touched the warrior's armor, the metal did not just dent or crack. It completely shattered, falling away like broken glass. The warrior underneath was unharmed, but his armor was completely destroyed. "How?" the warrior whispered. Jake tossed the hammer aside. "Practice." The 2 warriors who had been flanking him finally reached their positions. They attacked from both sides at once, their energy swords slicing through the air in perfect formation. Jake waited until the last possible second, then jumped straight up. The warriors' attacks met in the middle, right where Jake had been standing. Their energy swords clashed against each other with a sound like thunder. Both warriors were thrown backward by the force of their own attacks. Jake landed softly between them. He reached out with both hands and gently touched each warrior on the forehead. Both warriors' eyes rolled back and they collapsed unconscious. "That is 6, Jake said, counting on his fingers. The remaining 2 warriors were backing away now, their weapons trembling in their hands. They had seen their comrades, the strongest fighters in the Zephyrian Empire, defeated as easily as children. They did not understand what they were facing. "You are not human," one of them said, his voice shaking. "Humans are weak. Humans are slow. Humans break easily." Jake tilted his head. "Who told you that? Our intelligence reports? Our scientists? Our military advisors?" They all said the same thing. "Humans are one of the weakest species in the galaxy." "Ah," Jake said, understanding. "I see the problem." He walked toward the 2 warriors, and they backed away from him. They were trained killers, enhanced with the best technology their empire could provide, and they were afraid of one unarmed human. "Your intelligence reports were about our regular people," Jake explained. "Our farmers, our teachers, our shop owners. You studied the humans who live peaceful lives and never have to fight anyone." One of the warriors raised his weapon. "Stay back?" Jake stopped walking. "You never studied our soldiers. You never looked at the humans who are trained to fight. You never asked what we are really capable of when we need to be." "It does not matter," the warrior said desperately. "You are still just one human. We are enhanced. We are stronger, faster, better than any natural creature." Jake smiled sadly. "Enhanced. Yes, I can see that. Your muscles are bigger than they should be. Your bones are denser. Your reflexes are faster. Your armor makes you stronger." The warrior nodded. "Exactly, we are superior." "But you are enhanced to fight other enhanced creatures," Jake continued. "You are built to fight enemies who follow the same rules you do. You are not prepared for something that should not exist." "What do you mean?" Jake held up his hand. It looked like a normal human hand, maybe a little larger than average, but Nothing special. Do you see anything strange about this hand? The warrior studied it carefully. No, it looks normal. That is the problem, Jake said. It looks normal, but it is not. Jake reached out and touched the wall of the chamber. The wall was made of living coral, stronger than steel and flexible enough to absorb impacts that would shatter normal materials. Where Jake touched it, the coral began to glow brighter. Humans did not evolve on a nice planet, Jake said quietly. We did not evolve in a place where cooperation and peace led to survival. We evolved on a world that was trying to kill us every single day. The coral under his hand began to crack. Jake was not pressing hard, just resting his palm against the surface, but the incredibly strong material was breaking apart. Ice ages that lasted millions of years. Volcanic eruptions that blocked out the sun for decades. Meteor impacts that wiped out most of the life on the planet. Predators that could tear apart any other creature. Diseases that killed entire populations. The cracks in the coral spread outward from Jake's hand. The two warriors watched in horror as the nearly indestructible material crumbled under his gentle touch. For millions of years, only the strongest humans survived long enough to have children. Only the smartest, the toughest, the most adaptable. Generation after generation, getting stronger and stronger. Jake removed his hand from the wall. Where he had touched it, there was now a perfect handprint burned into the coral. The edges of the handprint were still glowing with heat. You enhanced yourselves with technology, Jake said. We were enhanced by surviving the worst planet in the galaxy. The two warriors dropped their weapons. They looked at Jake not with anger or determination, but with the kind of fear that comes from realizing. You are facing something completely beyond your understanding. What are you? One of them whispered. Jake's smile was gentle and sad. I'm what happens when a species spends millions of years learning that the universe is trying to kill them and decides to become unkillable instead. Both warriors fell to their knees. They were not surrendering in the military sense. They were prostrating themselves before something they recognized as far beyond their ability to fight. Jake looked around the chamber at the 10 elite warriors. Some were unconscious, some were injured, and some were just staring at him in shock. None of them were fighting anymore. I'm sorry, Jake said to them. I know this is not what you expected, but you needed to understand. He turned to look at Vextara, who had been watching the entire fight from her throne. Her four eyes were wide with terror, and her gill slits were fluttering so fast they were just a blur. Now, Jake said pleasantly, shall we discuss the terms of your surrender? Vextara's gill slits were moving so fast they looked like hummingbird wings. She stared at the scene in front of her and could not believe what she was seeing. Her 10 elite warriors, each one capable of conquering a small city by himself, were scattered around the chamber floor like broken toys. Some were unconscious, some were groaning in pain, and the rest were kneeling in fear. The human in front of her was not even breathing hard. His clothes were not torn or dirty. He looked like he had just finished taking a pleasant walk, not like he had just defeated the most dangerous warriors in the Zephian Empire. This cannot be real, Vextara said, her voice shaking. Our intelligence. Report said that humans are average in every way. You do not have the natural armor of the Krillians. You do not have the mind powers of the Mentari. You do not have the technology built into your bodies like the Syntoids. Jake walked slowly toward her throne, stepping carefully over the unconscious warriors. He did not want to hurt them any more than he already had. Your intelligence reports were studying the wrong humans. What do you mean, the wrong humans? You studied our farmers, our teachers, our storekeepers, Jake explained patiently. You looked at the humans who live peaceful lives and never have to fight anyone. You never bothered to study our soldiers. Vextara's throne began to move backward, retreating toward the wall. It was an automatic defense system that activated when she was in danger. But even your soldiers, the ones we have met in border fights, they were nothing like this. Border fights, Jake repeated, nodding. Yes, you met our regular military forces. Our peacekeepers, the soldiers we send when we want to avoid unnecessary killing. He paused and looked directly at her with those calm human eyes. This is what happens when you threaten our entire species. Vexthara felt cold fear spreading through her body. You are saying that humans have been holding back? For 3 months, your empire has been testing us, Jake said. You have been attacking our border stations, challenging our ships, seeing how we would react to pressure. His voice stayed calm and pleasant, but there was something dangerous underneath it. Did you really think we were not testing you right back? The chamber's bioluminescent walls were pulsing faster now, responding to Vexthara's fear. Testing us? How? Every diplomatic meeting, every border encounter, every accidental meeting between our species, we have been learning about you. Jake said, we studied your tactics, your technology, your psychology. We learned how you think and how you fight. Jake smiled, and somehow that smile was more frightening than any weapon. Did you think it was luck that I walked in here alone? Did you think it was stupidity that I came without weapons or backup? Vexthara's forearms were shaking now. You knew this was a trap. We have known about your final diplomatic exchange for 6 weeks, Jake said calmly. We knew about your elite warriors, their positions, your entire plan. He gestured to the defeated warriors around him. We also knew that you would never believe what humans are truly capable of unless you saw it with your own eyes. So you came here to demonstrate? Vexthara's voice was barely a whisper. I came here to give you a choice, Jake said. He stepped closer to her throne, and despite herself, Vexthara shrank back. You can continue believing that humanity is weak and ready for conquest. Or you can accept that maybe you have bitten off more than you can chew. One of the elite warriors was starting to wake up. He looked around confused, then saw Jake standing near the throne. The warrior tried to stand up, but his legs were shaking too badly to support him. Your warriors are tough, Jake said, noticing the movement. They recovered from injuries that should have kept them unconscious for hours. But they are not human tough. What does that mean? Vexthara asked. They are enhanced to fight other enhanced beings, Jake explained. They are built to fight enemies who follow the same rules they do, but they are not prepared for something. That breaks all the rules. Vexthara's gill slits fluttered in confusion. What rules? The rules of what is possible, Jake said. He held up his hand again, the same normal-looking hand that had crushed armor and broken weapons. This hand looks normal, right? It looks like it should not be able to do impossible things. Yes, Vexthara admitted. But it can, Jake said. Simply because humans did not evolve on a normal world. We evolved on a death world. Vexthara had heard this term before, but she had never really understood what it meant. Death world? A planet where everything is trying to kill you, Jake said. The weather, the animals, the plants, even the ground itself. For millions of years, only the strongest, smartest, most adaptable humans lived long enough to have children. Jake walked over to one of the chamber's support pillars. It was made of the same living coral as the walls, but thicker and stronger. It was designed to support the weight of the entire chamber and resist any attack. Do you know what happens when a species spends millions of years in an environment like that? Jake asked. He placed his hand on the pillar just like he had done with the wall. The coral began to glow where he touched it. Natural selection does not just favor the fittest, Jake continued. It demands them. Every generation, the weak die and the strong survive. But when your environment is constantly changing, constantly finding new ways to kill you, strength is not enough. The pillar began to crack under Jake's gentle touch. Vexthara watched in horror as stress fractures spread up and down the thick support beam. You also need to be adaptable. You need to be able to become whatever your environment demands. You need to be able to survive things that should be impossible to survive. The cracks in the pillar were spreading faster now. The chamber's support systems were warning of structural damage, but Jake was barely applying any pressure at all. Your species enhanced themselves with technology, Jake said, removing his hand from the pillar. My species was enhanced by evolution itself. Where Jake had touched the pillar, there was now a deep handprint burned into the coral. The edges were still smoking, and the bioluminescent patterns around the damage had gone dark. This is not possible, Vextara said desperately. Evolution does not work that way. Natural creatures cannot be this strong. Natural creatures from normal worlds cannot be this strong, Jake corrected. But Earth was not a normal world. He looked around the chamber at the defeated warriors, the damaged walls, the cracked pillar. Do you want to know what really scares other species? About humans? Vextara nodded, unable to speak. It is not that we are strong, Jake said quietly. Lots of species are strong. It is not that we are smart. Lots of species are smart. It is not even that we are adaptable, though very few species are as adaptable as we are. Jake turned to look directly at her, and Vextara saw something in his eyes that made her understand why her warriors had fallen to their knees. What scares them is that we are all of those things and we are impossible, Jake said. We should not exist. A species like us should have died out millions of years ago. But instead, we became the most dangerous thing in the galaxy. What is that? Vextara whispered. Jake's smile was sad and gentle. A species that refuses to die. The chamber fell completely silent except for the groaning of the damaged pillar and the rapid fluttering of Vextara's gill slits. Now, Jake said pleasantly, let me tell you about the choice you have to make. The chamber was completely quiet except for the sounds of injured warriors, breathing and the damaged pillar creaking under stress. Vextara stared at Jake with a mixture of terror and fascination. Her 4 eyes tracked his every movement as if he were a predator that might attack at any moment. You are telling me, she said slowly, that what I just saw represents normal capabilities for your species? Jake shook his head. No, what you just saw represents the capabilities of one human soldier who has been sitting behind a desk for the past 2 years doing paperwork. He paused to let that sink in. You want to see what we are really capable of? Asked the hegemony of sorrow. Vextara's gill slits went completely still. The hegemony of sorrow was one of the most feared military powers in the galaxy. They had conquered dozens of worlds and enslaved entire species. The hegemony of sorrow was destroyed 3 cycles ago. Their entire fleet disappeared. The reports said it was a natural disaster. There was no natural disaster, Jake said, his voice becoming cold and hard. There was Captain Ben Hayes and the crew of the UES Retribution, 1 human ship, 47 crew members. They responded to a distress call from one of our colony worlds. Vextara felt a chill run down her spine. What happened? The hegemony had attacked a farming community called New Eden, Jake continued. Population 43,000, mostly families with children. They were in the process of harvesting the population when Captain Hayes arrived. Harvesting? Vextara whispered. Taking them as slaves, Jake explained. The hegemony specialized in capturing peaceful populations and selling them to other species as workers. They thought human farmers would be easy targets. Vextara's 4 arms wrapped around herself. She was beginning to understand that she had made a terrible mistake. How many ships did the hegemony have? 300, Jake said simply. 300 warships, each one larger and more heavily armed than anything humans had built at that time. The hegemony fleet was one of the most powerful military forces in the galaxy. And 1 human ship fought them? The battle lasted 17 minutes, Jake said. When it was over, the hegemony of sorrow no longer existed as a military power. Their ships were destroyed, their bases were eliminated, and their leadership was dead. Vextara could barely breathe. 17 minutes? Captain Hayes sent a message to the hegemony's homeworld afterward, Jake continued. Just 3 words, we are disappointed. One of the elite warriors, who had recovered enough to stand, was backing away from Jake. His armor was cracked and his weapons were gone, but he was listening to every word. Human, he said in broken standard language. What are you? Jake looked at him with something like pity. I am a diplomat. I am the person they send when they want to avoid violence. He turned back to Vextara. Do you want to know what real soldiers are like, the ones we send when diplomacy fails? Vextara's throne had retreated as far as it could go. She was pressed against the back wall of the chamber, and her automatic defense systems were trying to activate. "What do you want from us?" "I want you to understand something very clearly," Jake said, his voice filling the entire chamber. The bioluminescent walls dimmed in response to the authority in his voice. "Humanity does not want to conquer the galaxy. We do not want to rule over other species or force them to live the way we do. We want to be left alone to build our homes, raise our families, and explore the stars in peace." "But," Vexthara whispered. "But if you force us to fight," Jake said, "if you threaten our worlds or our people, if you make the mistake of thinking that our desire for peace is the same thing as weakness, then you will discover why every predator on Earth learned to fear the species that walks upright." The chamber's automatic defense systems finally activated. Energy barriers descended from the ceiling, weapons emerged from hidden panels in the walls, and targeting systems locked onto Jake. Red laser dots appeared all over his body as the automated turrets prepared to fire. Jake looked around at the emerging weapons with mild interest. "Are these supposed to scare me?" "This chamber is designed to contain and destroy any threat to the Zephyrian Empire," Vexthara said, her voice gaining strength from the apparent advantage. "The weapons are powerful enough to punch through heavy battle armor. The energy barriers can contain a plasma explosion." "Interesting," Jake said. He walked casually toward the nearest energy barrier and reached out to touch it. The barrier flickered and died. "Your mistake is thinking that human capabilities follow the same rules as everyone else's." He walked through the space where the barrier had been. The automated turrets opened fire immediately. Energy bolts that could melt through spaceship. Armor struck Jake from every direction. The beams were so bright that they lit up the entire chamber like lightning, but Jake kept walking. The energy bolts hit him and seemed to disappear, as if he were absorbing them instead of being hurt by them. "The thing about humans," Jake said conversationally, walking through the weapons fire like it was a gentle rain, "is that we do not just adapt to our environment. We adapt to anything that tries to kill us." He reached the first turret and placed his hand on its armored housing. The weapon sparked and went silent, its targeting systems failing. "Radiation?" Jake said, moving to the next turret. "We develop resistance. Poison, we build immunity. Energy weapons?" He smiled and touched the second turret, which also died instantly. "Well, you just saw how that works out." One by one, Jake disabled every weapon in the chamber. The energy barriers collapsed when he touched them. The turrets stopped working when he placed his hand on them. Even the chamber's main power systems began to fluctuate as Jake's presence somehow interfered with their operation. "How are you doing this?" Vexthara demanded. "You are not using any technology, you are not wearing any armor. You are just touching things and they break." "I told you," Jake said patiently. "Humans adapt to anything that tries to kill us. Your weapons are trying to kill me, so my body is adapting to them." "That is impossible." "For most species, yes," Jake agreed. "But most species did not evolve on a world where the environment changed every few thousand years. Most species did not have to survive ice ages, volcanic eruptions, meteor impacts, and predators that could kill anything else on the planet." Jake finished disabling the last turret and turned back to face Vexthara. "When your environment is constantly trying to find new ways to kill you, evolution does not just favor the strong or the smart. It favors the impossible." The chamber was now completely defenseless. Every weapon was silent, every barrier was down, and the bioluminescent walls were flickering weakly. Jake stood in the center of the room, completely unharmed, while the most advanced defense system in the Zephyrian Empire lay broken around him. "What do you want?" Vexthara asked again, her voice barely audible. Jake's expression became serious. "I want you to call off your invasion plans. I want you to withdraw your fleets from human space. I want you to find something else to do with your time that does not involve threatening innocent people." "And if we refuse?" Jake was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke again, his voice was soft but carried a weight that seemed to press against the chamber walls. "Then you will discover why the galaxy's other conquering empires have all quietly decided to give human Space a very wide berth? Vexthara felt something she had never experienced before. Complete and total defeat. Not just military defeat, but the understanding that she was facing something so far beyond her capabilities that resistance was meaningless. We really do not want to hurt anyone, Jake continued. But we are very, very good at it when we have. What happens if we do not agree? Vexthara whispered. Jake's smile was pleasant, but somehow that made it more terrifying than any threat could have been. Then you will meet the humans who are not diplomats. The chamber was completely silent except for the sound of broken machinery sparking and the weak pulsing of the dying bioluminescent walls. Jake had destroyed every weapon system in the room with nothing more than his bare hands. The most advanced defense system in the Zephyrian Empire lay in ruins around him, and he was not even breathing hard. Vexthara stared at him with all four eyes wide with terror. Everything she thought she knew about the universe was wrong. Her empire had conquered 43 star systems by being stronger, smarter, and more advanced than everyone else. But this single human had just proven that none of that mattered. How? She whispered. How is any of this possible? Jake looked around at the disabled weapons and broken barriers. You have been asking the wrong questions, Vexthara. You have been so focused on what humans can do that you never asked what humans are. I do not understand. Every species you have conquered, every race you have defeated, they all evolved on worlds that were trying to help life survive, Jake explained patiently. Worlds where cooperation and working together led to success. Worlds where being reasonable and following the rules was rewarded. He gestured to the ruined defense systems around them. Earth was different. Earth was trying to kill everything that lived on it. But that makes no sense, Vexthara protested. Natural selection favors efficiency and specialization. It creates species that are good at one thing. For most worlds, yes, Jake nodded. But when your environment is constantly changing, constantly trying to find new ways to kill you, natural selection starts favoring something else entirely. What? Jake's smile was sad but gentle. The impossible. Humans are not just another species that learn to use tools. We are the species that learn to become tools. We do not just adapt to our environment. We become whatever our environment demands us to become. One of the elite warriors was slowly getting to his feet. His armor was cracked and his helmet was missing, but he was determined to protect his leader. He picked up a broken weapon and pointed it at Jake with shaking hands. Stay away from the high strategist, he shouted. Jake looked at him with genuine respect. You are brave. I appreciate courage. He paused. But you are pointing a broken weapon at a member of a species that survived the extinction of the dinosaurs. Ice ages that lasted millions of years and diseases that killed 90% of all life on our planet. Are you sure you want to do this? The warrior's weapon trembled in his grip. His training told him to fight, but his instincts told him he was facing something that could not be fought. We are Zephyrian elite. We do not surrender. I am not asking you to surrender, Jake said quietly. I am asking you to think. Your empire has conquered 43 star systems. How many of those worlds fought back when you attacked them? All of them, the warrior admitted. And how many of those species are still free? The warrior's weapon lowered slightly. None, exactly, Jake said. Now ask yourself this question. In all those conquests and all those wars, did any of those species ever offer you a choice? Did any of them ever give you a chance to walk away? The warrior thought about this. In every conquest he had participated in, the aliens had fought until they were completely defeated. None of them had ever offered mercy or compromise. No, he said slowly, but we are, Jake said. We are offering you the same choice we have offered every species that has challenged us. Walk away, find something else to do with your lives. Build things instead of destroying them. Create instead of conquering. The warrior dropped his weapon completely. He looked at Jake not with anger or fear, but with confusion. Why? Because we remember what it was like to be weak, Jake said simply. Every human alive today is descended from people who were once helpless against stronger enemies. We know what it feels like to be afraid, to be conquered, to have everything taken away from you. Jake looked around the chamber at all the defeated warriors. We do not want to do to others what was done to us. Vextara's throne had stopped retreating. She was pressed against the back wall with nowhere else to go. And if we refuse your offer? Jake turned to look at her, and for a moment she saw something in his eyes that made her understand why entire empires had chosen to avoid human space. It was not anger or hatred. It was the simple, unstoppable certainty of a force of nature. Then you will discover why the other conquering empires in this galaxy have all quietly decided that humans are not worth the trouble, Jake said. We really do not want to hurt anyone, but we are very, very good at it when we have to be. The chamber's emergency system suddenly activated. Vents in the ceiling opened and began flooding the room with a colorless gas. It was a neural toxin designed to knock unconscious any biological creature within seconds. Even the enhanced Zephyrian warriors would be paralyzed by it. Jake breathed in deeply and smiled. Interesting. Smells like flowers. Vextara watched in disbelief as Jake showed no reaction to a toxin that should have killed him instantly. What are you? I'm what happens when a species spends millions of years learning that the universe is trying to kill them and decides to become unkillable instead, Jake said calmly. I am what evolution creates when dying is not an option. He walked toward the chamber's exit, stepping carefully over the unconscious warriors who had finally succumbed to the neural toxin. At the doorway, he paused and looked back at Vextara. You have 3 days to withdraw your forces from human space, he said pleasantly. After that, we will assume you have made your choice. And then what? Vextara called after him, her voice barely audible through the failing translation system. Jake's smile was the last thing she saw, before the chamber doors sealed shut behind him. Then you will meet the humans who are not diplomats. 3 days later, the Zephyrian Empire announced a new policy. They would no longer expand into territories occupied by humans. The official statement said they wanted to focus on internal development and peaceful trade relationships. The galaxy's intelligence networks noticed something interesting. The Zephyrian fleet had not just withdrawn from human space. They had begun actively avoiding any system where humans were present. Merchant ships changed course to avoid human trade routes. Military patrols turned around when they detected human signals. When reporters asked for details about the policy change, Zephyrian officials would only say that they had gained new perspective on interspecies relations and that some challenges are not worth pursuing. Jake Sullivan returned to his office at the human embassy. He went back to his desk job, reviewing trade agreements and cultural exchange proposals. His colleagues noticed that he seemed more relaxed than usual. Several people mentioned that he had been humming old Earth songs while he worked. When Ambassador Lisa Morgan asked him about his successful negotiation with the Zephyrians, Jake just smiled and said, "Sometimes the best diplomacy is just being honest about who you are." The Zephyrian Empire kept their word. They withdrew all their forces from human space and began focusing on peaceful development of their existing territories. Trade between humans and Zephyrians became profitable for both species. Other empires in the galaxy took note of what had happened. Several aggressive species that had been considering expansion into human territory quietly changed their plans. The galaxy became a more peaceful place, and everyone agreed that was probably for the best. Years later, when young Zephyrian warriors asked their elders about the humans, they were told a simple truth. Humans are the species that refuses to die. It is better to be their friend than their enemy. Jake Sullivan continued his work as a diplomat, helping to negotiate peaceful solutions to conflicts across the galaxy. He never had to fight again because word had spread about what happened when humans were pushed too far. And in the deep space between the stars, other species quietly gave human ships a respectful distance, understanding that some things in the universe were better left alone.